This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. How's your summer going? I hope it's going well, and I hope you have plenty of things to read while you're on vacation or sitting on the beach. And if you don't, we got a couple coming right up right here. Frank Eberflus came into possession of some World War II photos after his dad died in the early 80s. And once he investigated the photos, really looked into them, he stumbled on a treasure trove of history that he details in his book, I'll Never Tell.
What inspired my book is that when my dad passed away back in 1982, I was always seeing the pictures that my dad had, and he kept them put away for a long, long time. Never showed anyone. He never talked to anyone about it. But whenever he did, and it probably wasn't a handful of people that he showed the pictures to, would always tell me, you don't tell nobody. So that's why the book title came out, I'll Never Tell. So I got all the pictures, and as I started looking into things, I found out that he was in the OSS, and that's the CIA today. So he was an undercover photographer back in the day of World War II and was in the war for 4 years. At one time, I thought I would like to have one hanging on my wall. That was 20 years ago. Everybody told me they were archives. Well, I never really looked at them that way until I showed a few more people. And then I was told that I might want to get them insured to see what they are worth. And the more I thought about it, the more places I started to look at and trying to figure out where all he went. That's when I looked into the history of where my father had gone in World War II. And the book itself shows where he had gone during the war. And some of the pictures had to do with the Normandy invasion, and France was a hold of us. And it's just a barrage of a lot of things. So that's when I thought, everybody's telling me, you need to write a book and sit down and get this, get it down on paper and what have you. So I figured I would write the book. I wanted to preserve history for what my father had done during World War II, being strapped to a wing of an airplane, taking the pictures. And I confirmed that by this other company that actually take the pictures and get them on a disc for me, because I wanted to preserve history. And the individual that did that for me, he actually looked at me and he said, your dad was strapped to a wing of an airplane. I said, well, I always believed him, but I would never confirmed on it. And that was pretty cool that it actually happened. But it took a lot of work to put everything together to get to the point to be able to produce the book. And I wanted to share the history with everyone in the world. And those pictures say an awful lot.
In the photos, we came across the smaller photo that his dad was sitting in his desk with his feet propped up. And on the board behind him, hanging on the wall, the note said, "Get the boys out of the salt mines by Christmas." Okay, so we had a map also in some of that paperwork about the salt mines. Now, if you dig back in history, that's where Hitler hid a lot of that artwork he stole. And so when we looked at the picture and saw that handwritten note, "Get the boys out of the salt mines by Christmas," I said, yeah, and that's the area your dad was in. So he wasn't part of Monuments Men, but I wondered, and we'll never know for sure, if he had to do with being able to be in that area. He was, he's German, he spoke German, he was undercover. Did he help the Monuments Men groups get into those areas? We'll never know. We do have a website, and people go to the website, they can see the photos, and they can order them. It is eberflusfiles.com.
All right. Thank you for that information, Carol. That is files.com. And thanks for sharing that history. I think we should do a whole show on books written during the pandemic because we sure have plenty of them, including A Dark Secret by Jeanette Flores. She loves reading true crime novels and she wants to be a criminal lawyer when she grows up. So she took that passion and poured it into her book.
I initially wrote it because my parents are immigrants. They immigrated from Cuba. So I wanted to kind of incorporate that into the story with, the characters. The main character, her name is Emiliana, and her nickname is Emmy. And I wrote about like the different dynamics of her family, the secrets, because almost every family, has something, some sort of thing that they have a certain bond. And I wrote about the family dynamics of it. I wrote about true crime as well because I wanted to incorporate both the experience of immigration, of being a daughter of parents that are immigrants, but I also wanted to incorporate, my passion for true crime and criminal law.
So when did your parents come here?
My dad came here on a raft, and my mother came on one of the last Liberty flights from Cuba.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What does he do now?
My dad's a truck driver. He has his own company.
Good for him. You must be so proud.
I am. I'm really proud of my dad and everything that he's done for me and my mom. So I have many characters in my story. I have obviously Emiliana, which is the main character. I have her parents, her siblings as well. The detective of the story, which kind of unravels the secrets. So our main character, Emmy, basically talks a lot with her parents. And her parents, they end up giving the business to her. And she ends up finding out about her family's secrets. Her family has like a butcher shop. They were successful, but the business has started to like go down. She's young, and so it's kind of up to Emmy to try and save her parents' business. So she ends up taking reins of the business and making new meat products, and people that are like not very well known start disappearing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, disappearing with quotations.
So she'll do anything to help her parents.
She'll do anything to help her parents. So the family has certain secrets which I mainly want to leave to other people to read the book to find that out.
Just give me a hint.
Certain children in the family aren't really what they say they are, who they say they are.
Are they aliens?
No. One of Emmy's brothers doesn't exactly feel like himself, and he struggles with his gender, his identity. And they're different, yeah.
They're not necessarily their assigned gender.
Yeah.
Is that a secret? Why is that a secret?
Well, it's kind of like a whole culture thing,
So that's one family secret, and there's more?
Yes. There's definitely an underlying message, I would say, that, family is what you have, and religion plays a lot of into this story. Like I used a lot of religious, ideals into this story. I would say that, family is above all, and that faith is really important. That's definitely an underlying message.
Right, Jeanette. Great job your first time out. You're a young woman, a young writer. I can't wait to see what else you come up with in the years ahead. Kent Wilmoth graduated in 2019, just in time for the pandemic. And while he was working toward building a game development studio, he was bothered by cancel culture. And that inspired him to write When the Twits Came to Town, a story for adults and kids at the same time.
Well, back in 2021, I learned that Dr. Seuss Enterprises had discontinued some of their books, and I disagreed with their reasoning, and I thought that they had caved a little too quickly to the mob. They only did it because there was some sort of pressure from people who were a little too overzealous, and the reasons they banned their books were kind of, I thought they were kind of ridiculous. And so I thought, well, if they're not gonna keep books on the shelf, then maybe I'll just make my own and see how people like it. And so I decided to write a book based on that idea. To the kids, When the Twits Came to Town is about a bunch of annoying birds that want to mess everything up. But to adults that read the book to their kids, I'm sure they'll recognize the more political theme, which is that letting the angry mob run things just isn't good for anyone. I just started writing it, and it wound up being about 100 pages long. But having said that, it's not very word heavy. It's very picture heavy, which I thought was important while I was writing it, that it was very colorful and fun to look at for the kids and stuff. But story goes, this town, and everyone in the town is creative and fun. And one day a flock of twits show up, and twits are just little blue birds that want to control everything, and they don't like what's happening in the town, so they decide to go through and destroy everything, from telling people what to wear, to telling people how to paint, to telling people how to create music or what to write. And eventually there's a child in the town who's like, you know what, this is ridiculous. We're just going to ignore you guys and keep doing what we were doing, because things were a lot more fun when you guys weren't here. And they kicked the twits out of town. And at the end, the child says, "You refuse to converse. You just shut down our thoughts. You think things you don't like should be banned on the spot. So we'll just ignore you and move on with our lives. We won't let you control us and cause any more strife." The twits shook with rage and started losing their feathers. People taking a stand made them madder than ever. They were done with the birds and their terrible rules. They couldn't care less that the twits called them fools. Fuming and molting, the twits left in a snit. They had been defeated, and so they all quit. They marched out of town and didn't return. The twits were no longer the city's concern.
So you never worked with rhyming before? Like, were you so passionate about this that the words just kind of came to you?
So I had never written anything before, and I think the rhyming, coming up with the rhythm and the rhyming, was probably the hardest part of this whole thing. I had all the story beats, I had all the things I wanted to say, but coming up with the rhyming was definitely a very big challenge I had to overcome. But I overcame it, so.
Yeah, you definitely overcame it. You know what this reminds me of? The Simpsons, that TV show where they've got the cartoon characters and all that funny stuff for kids, and then they've got some really great jokes for parents that go right over the kids' heads. I love it. Keep rhyming, Kent. Keepers of Power is a story that came to Joshua Undum in a dream in 2014, and he hopes you will be as fascinated as he was by the way the story just seemed to lay itself out.
The story is about Tobias, who finds out that his grandfather had found a relic, and the relic isn't what it looks like. It looks like a jewel, but it's not. And throughout the path, he finds a hidden culture of people who have this mystical power, which is referred to as the flow. And there's also different groups view it differently. So he gets thrown into this adventure of finding out what the relic actually is, finding out that there's a darker threat built within the relic itself, and he has to figure out what it is and how to stop it.
And all of this came to you in a dream.
Yeah, the part actually from the dream is a very minute part within the book itself, and the story just built itself from there. And through the process of writing it, I went through and I was shuffling stuff around because it fit better in different scenarios. But the main storyline starts out, you meet his grandfather, and then you meet Tobias himself, and then you meet several other characters along the way and find out the process of finding this evil and figuring out how you're going to stop it.
Well, the last sentence in the description of your book, it says, Tobias must not only find peace with his life, but also save the galaxy from the ghost of the Keeper's secret past. That's some task he has to accomplish.
Right, and the ghost of the Keeper's past is a terror that happened within the Keepers themselves that they don't speak about because it's so horrible that they try to eradicate every record of the event. They figure if they can bury the event, it won't happen again, not realizing that it's actually because they buried it. It's because it's coming around again. The book is written in such a way that it does conclude in a good manner. My parents and several of my friends and family have read it, and they enjoy the way the book ends, but it leaves it open for a sequel, which I have started.
That's great. And you're getting support from work too, right?
Actually, several people at work do have it. I'm going to work with them because we have a weekly huddle at the office, and I'm working with the management, working on getting a time set up to do a signing there. One of the higher ups within the company actually purchased several copies for me to sign, and they did kind of a raffle giveaway with some of the books. So
Very nice, Joshua. All of our writers should have that kind of support. Thank you. Gilda Bolton was with the military police before she retired in Emeryville, California. Always a writer, she finally found the time to write and publish The Dog Father, Calling Snoop.
My heart's desire was to create this novel, and I had a character in mind, which was Snoop Dogg, and I wanted him as the main character for this book that I had completed. And if there was any producer out there that was interested, I wish that they would take the time and, show an interest in. It's a fiction, and my main character is a guy named CB, father of the drug lord, a wealthy guy that was into drugs, and he had a lot of investments that he had acquired. And he also was married a very long time ago, but he and his wife, they went in different directions. And then he had a young son that he had to bring up on his own, but he also had his oldest son that lived with his grandmother. And his son, after the grandmother passed away, he decided to come and live with his father, which was actually the main drug lord. And he also became a big drug dealer. And it shows how a young guy can get caught up into a world, that's full of crime and drugs, buying cocaine and stuff from other big drug dealers. And they were out there putting it out there that's, in really messing up a lot of lives and stuff of young people. And it just shows how a young person can be warped and not aware of things that can really affect their lives and destroy their inner ability to function in life. Their father eventually is older, and the young guys, they take over their father's business. They become invested in having other guys come into the organization, and they actually, destroying just lots of lives and stuff. And it's like a shocking disturbance of crime that takes over in this story.
Does the book end here?
Well, it actually ends with the young guy that actually left his grandmother to come and live with his father, that his life is overtaken by other drug lords because they have become so invested in crime and drugs and, with doing a lot of criminal activity that his life actually comes to end in the very end. And his younger brother know that the father has been so distorted for the fact of losing his oldest son to the violence that has occurred. He actually, in the very end of the story, takes over and continues to have the company, their organization, rise.
All right, Gilda. Good luck finding Snoop Dogg. Thank you. Dr. Pastor Daisy May is a pastor, minister, and staff chaplain. And one day she was inspired to write about an experience that was out of this world. And I was minding my own business, my spiritual autobiography.
I was minding my own business. What inspired my book is like, I need the people understand that God is actually real, because I had no idea. I grew up no religion really or anything like that, and I had all I can say is a supernatural experience that was out of a Steven Spielberg movie. I mean, I saw a long time ago Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that's the first thing he gets. Alien thing, he's all That didn't happen to me. Instead, I got knocked down physically. Nobody catch me. I felt like it was like being extremely drunk, but you didn't drink anything. We're at a Bible study and you're feeling good and you're laughing and you're crying. And then I had this encounter with God, and I realized, okay, he exists. Okay, what do I do with this? I'm like, okay, and that's how I got into being a Christian. And that only happened again another time 2 years later, because I was stationed in Hawaii at the time in the Navy in Pearl Harbor. And then I got transferred to Oxnard, California. And I was in some other, this time with Hunt, this was not a Bible study really, it was just a conference. And the same thing happened to me, this time instead of backwards, it was forward. And after that, I could not be an atheist or agnostic. I mean, I just like, okay, that's it. That's what the book is really about, how I became what I am right now, how I got into ministry, how I went to Bethel Seminary to get my MDiv degree, how I on my own, I got my doctorate degree, and how I just, anybody that's interested, that's not Christian, I just thought they'd be interested to know that, hey, I was not a Christian, but this is what happened to me, and I hope it blesses you. That's basically it. He loves everyone. There is stipulations, but the stipulations is not really, it depends on people's religion. My God is Jesus Christ. What he did to me, this is why I've changed my lifestyle. Things that I used to do that was not healthy for me, I couldn't do them anymore. Partying, getting drunk. Okay, I'm a 100% disabled vet. I get VA benefits because of that. PTSD, because of things that happened in the Navy that God helped me through, like military sexual trauma. I'm just being real. And if I did not have God getting me through all this stuff, I'd probably be in a straitjacket. God has got me to the point where I forgave people that have harmed me in the past, not just from the military, but in general. And I've gone God. I love him. And I just wanted to let people know this is what happened. This is how I live. And he has helped me get through the things, the crap that has been thrown at me. And I'm sure, and he has done with others.
All right, Daisy, thanks so much for sharing your story. Nellie Bama is completing a master's degree in clinical mental health, and having gone through a number of personal, emotional challenges, she thought she might help others through her book, Rebuilding Your Self-Esteem, Changing the Perception of Self. What kind of challenges, Nellie?
Emotionally and mentally, like with depression and with my self-image. And in the course of that struggle, I was trying to find materials, right, that could help me get out of it. And I found that there was not really a good material that had information with details. And that's how I decided that I was going to put down something that could help other people as well. So in the book, you have, I talk a little bit about what self-esteem is and just defining it. And then I go right ahead to how to overcome self-esteem. If you have a low self-esteem, do you need to overcome that? And then I go further to identify like what are the causes, because sometimes you might be facing that struggle, but you don't really know like what is the cause. So I identified like different reasons. I came up with a name while I was doing some research that's called body dysmorphic disorder, right? So you are just obsessed about some defective parts of your body, and your mind just stays on it. And sometimes it's distracting and it affects you cannot really function very well. So I went through that and I put that as some of the factors that people face. And I think that there's a lot of people who also have those issues, but they might not necessarily come out with that. that they're dealing with that, right? I've come across people who have issues with like acne on their face, right? And that affects their self-esteem. So that's the other part that I dealt with. I went further to look at what do you need to do to deal with a low self-esteem if you have it. What do you do? First of all, it comes from the mind. The mind is very powerful. You have to change how you see yourself, how you think about yourself. And that has to do with the materials that you read. I looked at the Word of God, right? Because I used that when I was in that phase of struggle. So I had to like read the Word of God to hear like what does God say about me? You understand? Because there are times that you have a twisted perception of yourself, and studying the Word of God and finding out what God thinks about me changed how I perceived myself at that point. The other factors that I looked at you have to do some self-talk. I found that from a book that I read, a self-help book. The author talked about the fact that you had to talk yourself out of your thoughts, because there are times that your thoughts overtake. How do I put it?
They consume you. Your thoughts consume you.
Yes. So you have to talk. So your words, they overpower your thoughts, your thinking. So you have to do some self-talk every day. Talk to yourself. Talk yourself up. And that's one of the factors I looked at. My vision is to help children like build their self-image, like to embrace their uniqueness, because that's one thing that I identified, that a lot of people don't really own their uniqueness, especially in this era of social media where like there's a lot of people putting up like the best part of their lives out there. Sometimes it can be very distracting, and it can affect how you see yourself. You might think that your life is not as good as the other person, or you're not as pretty as the other person. I mostly share with them my story and how I overcame it and why I wrote the book. And I just tell them that this is like a self-help guide. It's just like a little tiny book, but it has like some information that could be helpful to somebody that needs it.
All right, Nellie, could not think of a better reason to write a book. Thank you so much. And by the way, yes, they were Nellie's kids you heard in the background. I love that. Nothing like working from home. All right, that is all we have for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Download the podcast at 710WOR.com. Find out more about the books and our authors at pagepublishing.com. And we will post a brand new episode next week. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.